the big G, and it's not your G spot. It's feeling guilty.
That's one G spot I can find pretty easily. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Silver and Sensational. You know me, I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi, and I'm here to bask in the glory of our wonderful host, Lois Mills.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Silver and Sensational with Jessica and the Lois Mills.
Last week, if you joined us, we were talking all about the power of yes. And we want to know if that was something that worked for you, if you employed it in your life. And today, we thought it would be interesting to talk about the power of no.
Yes.
What is that? What does the power of no mean to you, just really quickly before we get to our listener question?
Well, I did all the things, the people pleasing, avoiding confrontation, blah, blah, blah. And it took me many, many years to be able to say no, be firm in saying it, and yet with kindness, and not feel guilty. And it took a lot of years to do that. And I think maybe this is something that afflicts women more than men, having difficulty saying no.
It certainly does show up a lot more or at least women talk about it more now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So saying yes when you want to say no is what we're going to talk about today. So which of the readers' questions did you choose for us today, Jessica?
Well, we do have a great question. I felt like this was right in line with what we were looking for today. This question is from Erica T. Hi, Lo. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings with a mother who is getting to the point of needing more support in her living arrangement. We haven't been able to decide as a family what the best solution is. I think finding a home where she can be independent but close to us is the best solution, but my younger siblings are putting pressure on me to take her in. It's not like I make the most money out of the 3 of us, and they're beginning to think I'm selfish, like usual, for not wanting to live with her. What do I do? Sincerely, sick of siblings.
Wow. Well, I feel for you. I didn't have that situation because my brother passed away before my mother needed that extra care. So I didn't have anyone else to have to account to. But I have to say that I think it's presumptuous of them to think that you should be the one to take her in. I think so much depends on circumstances. I mean, if you're working, if you, where are they with, and does she have enough money to go to an assisted living situation? But I'm going to address, this is something for you and your siblings to work out. But I'm going to address the one thing you said that I can help with, because I can't help you with your other situation because you've got 2 other people that you need to deal with, and I'm not dealing with them. I'm just talking with you. The fact that they're beginning to think you're selfish, I have to ask you, why do you care?
Ooh.
If they think you're selfish. And apparently they've always said this so that you almost are believing what they're saying. And I'm asking you, let's say you are selfish. Let's just say you are selfish. So what? That has really nothing to do,
I love it,
with 3 siblings who have the same mother to share in the responsibilities on some levels for each of them. So if you're worried about what your siblings think, then could you be worried about how to say no? Is this something we can maybe listening today may help you. I think that if you can't take care of your mother, or you don't want to be solely responsible for taking care of your mother, that this is something that you put out on the table with them. And it's everyone's responsibility. Just because you're firstborn, I mean, what if you said, well, it's the baby, or it's the middle person, it's the middle sibling's responsibility? Where's it written that the firstborn has to bear this? So I am believing that perhaps you're having a problem saying no because you're worried that they're going to think you selfish. They're going to call you selfish. There may be a confrontation. Any of the things that may be part of the history in your family if you don't say yes to what their demands are. So, if you really can't, or you really don't want to, either one, be the sole responsibility for taking care of your parents, then this has to go, or your mom, this has to be put out on the table for the three of you. And you're going to have to stand firm. And another solution to this issue has to be found. Hopefully, the three of you can agree. But one thing is, if there isn't an agreement, you're not going to back down, because taking care of someone is a huge responsibility, both in time and in expense. And again, I do feel that it's every sibling's responsibility to share. So I hope that answers your question. Stay tuned to what we're going to talk about today. And if you have anything further you want to discuss, just email and we will, I'll get back with you. Okay? So thanks so much.
I think that's wonderful, Lois.
I hope it is. I hope it is.
And that's why I decided on Erica's question, because I think it does segue nicely into what we're talking about. Even though I've gotten to a better place with saying no, it's a challenge. Some people who might be watching today may be on the journey of learning, oh, wow, I say yes when I don't mean to. Or you might be retroactively applying what we're talking about today to a couple events in your life where you wish you had only said no and you didn't. It's a complicated concept when we're told to be agreeable, especially as women.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we're really not taught, A, that it's okay to say no, and B, how to say no gracefully and kindly. Mm-hmm. So, we say yes when we really want to say no for a few reasons, And I've probably, I'm guilty of all of them, fearing rejection or that you'll disappoint others. I did that a great deal. Yes, 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 and yes, yes, some more for for either of those two reasons. Social anxiety is another reason given. That I don't think affected me all that much, but being excluded from family, friends, coworkers also was an issue for me. And, it just doesn't work to be saying yes when you really mean no, because people will get used to you either bailing them out or taking care of them. A long time ago, I had a friend who's now deceased. She would call, and there would always be, she would be in some emotional trauma and occasionally be threatening suicide, and she needed me right away. And it happened a lot, and I would be jumping in the car and running over there, and I guess it made me feel like I was a savior, and I was a caretaker and I could save her from committing suicide or whatever other drama she had been creating. And one day this occurred when I had an appointment with my shrink. And I called to cancel, it was very last minute, the appointment with my shrink. And I gave him the reason, and he said, "Well, all right, Lois, but I do want you to know that if you don't answer the phone, she'll keep calling numbers until somebody does." Wow.
Wow.
Wow, wow, wow. Well, I have to say that I preferred not to believe him.
This is a complicated conversation just due to the nature of the subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I have personal experience with a boy who cried wolf situation when it comes to suicide. And it makes it hard to distinguish from the person who's actually suffering, because there are people who learn it's a wonderful tactic to get attention. And it doesn't mean that they're not in pain or they're not upset or having a hard time. But there is definitely a brand of human out there that realizes people have to drop everything to take care of them in that moment when they're talking about it. And that's tough, because we're taught, and rightfully so, if that word is talked about, it's a serious matter.
Well, I mean, even when she didn't use that word, I would drop everything and run to her aid.
Well, you knew they were fragile. She was fragile at that point.
Well,
right?
But she wasn't the only one. I did this with other people as well. And the reason I'm saying it doesn't work is because I began to feel taken advantage of and used. And quite frankly, it was more than just a feeling. It was a reality. I was being taken advantage of, and I was being used. And for all of us out there, this is not a path to making yourself feel good about yourself. If you think you're being used or taken advantage of. So that it took me a while to extricate myself from that situation. And of course, the only way it happened with her particular situation was that it turned into a confrontation.
Which is another reason why we might want to say yes in a situation, because we can see it coming a mile away.
We can see it coming, and maybe I don't want to get all psychological, but in my home of origin, believe me, it was much easier just to make my mother happy and say yes and go along with it.
Right.
Than it was to be confrontational. So
that's survival as a child, though.
Yeah, but that's all right, survival as a child, but it wasn't all right as an adult. And actually in my marital relationships, I said yes to avoid confrontation.
I mean, and not to bring another topic into it, but even when you shared with us in the first episode of this season, your soon-to-be first husband wasn't at the rehearsal dinner and wasn't at the rehearsal, and you still walked down the aisle. You know, because this is why it is. It's not your fault if you have a hard time saying no, but once you've started to recognize why, you have a responsibility to yourself to learn how, no is a form of boundary, having healthy boundaries, and you have to learn how to get those.
Well, listen, like anything else, if what you're doing at some point starts to make you feel bad about yourself, it's time to change
Right.
that.
Right. Right.
So in my case, resentment builds, and then self-esteem suffers. And then people become so used to your acquiescing to whatever it is they want that if you then say, I'm really sorry, I can't do it. I mean, it's a personal affront, and now you have a problem with that relationship. So I don't see how saying yes when you really mean to say no benefits us. I just don't see what the benefit is. If you need, it's kind of like that white lie. If you need to say yes to something that isn't very important. As an example, I had another friend who, I'm usually I'm pretty easy. If somebody wants to make a plan to do something, they want to go to such and such for dinner. Is it my favorite place? No. But I always say to myself, well, hopefully it's not going to be your last supper. And I'm really going to enjoy the company of the person. So if they suggest X and I'm not crazy about it, I'll say, okay, fine.
You're finding you can make it work.
Exactly. So I will go along with things unless I feel very strongly about it.
And it sounds like in that situation as well, the good outweighs the bad.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not, listen, it's a meal. It is not that important to me. That particular meal, what's more important is enjoying the company of the person I'm going with.
Right, 100%.
So I have this one friend who said, you're always so agreeable. And I thought, well, what the hell does that mean? Does this mean I'm a pushover? Does this mean, I have no backbone? And, I said to her, but, the things that you're asking me about, they're not that important that, if I'm sitting on the fence, or it could be a maybe, but it's going to make you happy and it's not going to make me unhappy, I agree to do it. It's, if you want to meet me at 10, and that means I have to take a nap to be able to go out at 10 o'clock, all right, I'll take the nap.
Right.
It's, I weigh how important an issue it is for me. But when I start to feel, and I'm saying I when I mean we, start to feel that, this is kind of a one-way street. I don't feel this is fair. I'm not feeling good about myself. I really don't want to do it. So what I'm saying is, let's look closely at when to say no, because that's important.
I had several relationships change when I became more independent, when I became less available, more comfortable in my equality with those friends, which did result in me not feeling the need to acquiesce as much or have to be doting. And those relationships changed.
I would imagine,
and
yeah.
ended.
And as some of them would.
Well, and the hard part about it at the time was, but I love that person still, and I'm gonna miss that relationship. And learning that part of it is when that one person has a confrontation with you because you said no and won't accept your ability to have agency, that's not a relationship you need anyway. And it's a pretty easy way to weed out those that are going to treat you with love and respect that you deserve, like you deserve to treat yourself with, and those that will take advantage of your willingness.
I am so impressed with you, Jessica, that you have learned this at such an early age, because believe me, it took me many years beyond your years to put into play what you've just said. So, if you're saying yes, because it would be only to please someone. And again, I balance that with you really want to say no.
Oh my gosh. And your gut I think that's an important thing too, is your gut knows when you're like, oh God, why did I just say yes to that dinner date? Really quickly, I had a friend who said this to me a year ago, and it perfectly worked out for me. And this is the thing I judge all of my engagements with. Don't say yes to something a week from now that you wouldn't say yes to today.
Ah, very good. Very good. It's interesting that you bring up dinner date, because I was with a very dear friend, lovely, lovely, lovely lady, who talked about having someone in her life that really was toxic. And her husband didn't like, they would go out as two couples, and her husband didn't like either one of them, and she didn't like this one's husband, but she felt that she had to keep saying yes. And we talked about it, and I said, just don't be available. It's a perfect time. Your life is changing. And this is the perfect time to beg off being available to meet with her, or the four of you meeting. That gets old real quick.
You stop asking if that person doesn't say yes.
Exactly. And maybe I would start with that, is basically what I say. I would start with that. And then if it reaches a point where, she confronts you, then you'll just have to, in the kindest way possible, say that, it just doesn't work for you. I mean, listen, how many times have men told me this just isn't working? So,
we're used to it.
I'm kind of used to hearing it. So it'd be kind of fun to say it.
To have the opportunity. It's great.
Exactly. But, when somebody is toxic. I recently, it was the weirdest thing. I went to a good friend's house, and this woman was also a guest, and I had never met her before. And there was just something about me where she from the moment, she actually opened the door to my friend's house. And that whole evening I felt like these darts kept hitting me. And if I said black, she said white, and I said pink, she said green. And it just,
no.
I just felt like, I was getting the blood taken from me. And I did something. I was still reeling from it. And then 2 days later, I called my good friend, and I asked her if this was a good friend of hers, and she said, well, she's a new friend. And I said, I just never have run into anyone who, on the very first meeting, was so disagreeable. And she said, well, yes, there was a lot of tension. And I wanted to say, no shit, but,
what a weird diplomatic way to say that, too.
I wanted to say she was being a goddamn bitch, but
right.
I said she was so disagreeable. And
I love that.
And I just, I have to say, when
did your friend know that about her? Like,
No, she said, no, to my good friend's defense. She said, well, I've never seen that side of her. And I said, oh, you know what? Got it. Okay. I understand completely. And there was sort of silence on my friend's part. And I said, I've run into this before. There are certain individuals that I either, I don't know what you want to say, intimidate, whatever it is.
I always call it chemical. There's something a chemical, and this does happen with women specifically.
Yes, very much so. And so I said, I understand. I get it. And you know what? Thank you for saying that, because now all this angst and everything I was feeling, I can let go of it, because now I know where this is coming from, and I know I never have to see this person again.
God, and there is something freeing about the fact that it's personal. That makes you go, oh, that is so their problem and not my problem.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
So Lois, I want to know, how do I know when to say no?
Again, going back to what I started to say before I got off track with this
we're
story.
having a great time. So
it, if it's only to please someone else and you really want to say no, but you're saying yes just to please somebody, that's one way. Now another, and this is where your gut comes in big time. If it crosses your personal boundaries, please, you will never feel good about yourself if you agree to do something that goes against your value system or your boundaries. This is really the time to stand up for yourself and say no, because you will never feel good about saying yes when you're doing that. Also, when you're overloaded, so many women are overloaded with responsibilities, working, family, houses, extracurricular, whatever it is, and you don't have time to bring that casserole to the kids, whatever, you simply have to say, I can't do it this time, perhaps another time. You explain that you at the moment are overloaded and just can't take on one more thing.
because you won't do that thing well. That casserole's not going to taste good.
You're going to feel resentment. You're going to be angry, and you're going to run away the next time you see that caller ID pop up. You're not going to want to answer, because here it comes. One more thing I have to put on my back to do. Also, if you just plain feel uncomfortable, I have to say, this is such an overused word. I really feel like we've all become panty-waisted people I'm so uncomfortable. Oh, please spare me. Enough with the uncomfortable. I just listened to an interview with Arnold Schwarzenegger about his new book, which I'm definitely getting. Be Useful. And Arnold talks about us raising children that are just coddled.
Sensitive, yeah.
So sensitive. So be careful with that feeling uncomfortable in terms of you don't have to explain it to anybody else. And when you really feel uncomfortable and when you're just using that word because you want to get out of something.
Sure. I think that takes a little nuance to find the difference between that and also like crossing a personal boundary. But I think we can find ourselves in situations, just to kind of clear that up for myself even, where you're like, oh, this feels a little off. I can't put my finger on it, but
that's all that you need.
I can excuse myself from this situation.
That's all that you need. It feels a little off. That's a real
You don't need to be a victim in that moment. You don't
Exactly.
need to now find a reason why you don't like the person that asked you, whatever it was. You can, and you also don't need to excuse it. But yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it for that bullet point, I think.
Exactly. And then lastly, and this is a big one as to why you're saying yes when you really want to say no, is feeling obligated, or the big G, and it's not your G spot, it's feeling guilty, which
That's one G spot I can find pretty easily. As an Italian, that is our spot for sure.
guilt. I have to say, again, another little story. I had a Guatemalan housekeeper who was a very simple lady, sweet, and somebody who was quite religious. But she walked the talk. She just didn't, do the mea culpas.
Sure.
She really walked the talk. And she used to just amaze me. And I learned from her when she would say, "That is not my problem, that is their problem." And I'm talking about somebody who, didn't have a great intellect, but she knew when to accept the responsibility or guilt, if you want to call it that, and when not to. So if you're still allowing people to make you feel guilty, boy, I suggest you start working on that one now.
I mean,
And
yeah.
because again, all of these things affect your self-esteem, which, again, another overworked phrase, but this is not the way to feel good about yourself. And in order for you to really live a life of personal freedom and contentment, you have to feel good about yourself. And another thing, if you don't feel good about yourself, how do you expect other people to feel good about you? If you're projecting this, "I'm a piece of shit because I didn't do something I should have done," well, you're playing right into the people that are using and taking advantage of you. So, for whatever it's worth, if you're still allowing other people to make you feel guilty. Now, I say that, allowing other people to make you feel guilty. And I leave that to you to give some thought to those words in the way that I've said them.
Yeah, as always, I have some takeaways, and I have my own experience with. I remember learning that no could help me, and because I was so unaccustomed to it, having a hard time to see how the other half live. And it isn't until you start getting more comfortable with saying no to that, making that casserole, and then you realize you have that evening to yourself, and you can recharge, and you feel you really do build your self-esteem through taking care of yourself, and then are able to serve others better because you're pouring from a full cup.
Exactly. You don't need to be somebody's stepping stone. Or,
And you help people more by letting them help themselves as well, I have found, at times.
At times. I mean, listen,
That doesn't mean people don't need help at times as well, too.
and that's a completely different thing, because what we're addressing here today so please don't misunderstand the meaning of today's program. It's when you're saying yes and you really want to be saying no. That's what we're addressing. If you're saying yes because you want to say yes, I love it.
Have a great time. And that was kind of what we were talking about last week, too.
Exactly. Say yes all you want, but Jesus, don't be saying yes when you really want to say no.
I think a couple ways you could make sure that the answer is no before you give that answer is do the work and learn where your boundaries are. I think this applies to what you were saying with, if it crosses your personal boundaries. I struggled and didn't know what they were because I was so accustomed to letting people cross over them that my gut got confused. I was like, oh, I feel obligated to say, like, everything kind of falls into that. So if you do like the work with a therapist or with a close friend that you actually trust, who doesn't take advantage of you, you can find those boundaries so that when someone asks you something or something is asked of you that crosses that, your response is quicker than you have said yes. And you're like, oh, wait, no, I absolutely wish I didn't. And then another thing I think that helps, and a friend of mine who, funnily enough, Lois, we had the same immediate contention as you did with that woman at the dinner party, and actually have come on the other side and become friends. She has this amazing ability when someone asks them something, instead of saying no outright, she says, let me think about it, and doesn't give an answer right then and there. And I know her well enough to know she's saying, let me think about it, and it's going to be a no, but it gives you a breath before you have to answer.
Well, something that people have always said about me, and maybe one day we'll do a show on it. Women have a tendency to answer when a question is posed to them. And I don't. If I believe a question is out of line, I simply won't answer. There'll be this silence.
I love that.
And it is so difficult for people to deal with dead silence. It's amazing. It really is. It's just something it's not a game. It's a natural thing that I do. And I didn't know this until I was told by more than one person that, my God, you intimidated me because you just didn't answer.
Wow.
And what I hear is, I hear women, and I think we really should probably do, we should do this as a topic one day, because I have heard women respond to questions that were so extraordinarily personal from somebody that they had just met in a casual situation. And I see that this is something that women tend to do, is answer questions. Oh, someone asked this, it was a rabbi that asked a lady, just for having coffee in the morning, well, do you think your husband ever had an affair? And she was, well, I don't know. And he said, well, have you ever had an affair? And I'm thinking, and she said, oh, well, no, I didn't. I'm thinking, why didn't you just tell him?
God.
Why don't you? That's out of line. I don't want to answer. Just say nothing. Anyway, I think that might be, if you out there feel that you want to listen to more of how to handle these impertinent questions or things that you just don't want to answer, let us know, and we'll do.
I think that's right. I think
we'll do a program on it. But anyway, Jessica.
Well, I think what I love about doing this is that it's very it bolsters a lot of the things I've already learned, helps me learn new tactics. I know it's helping our audience, and I hope so. I think that topic will be how to be a respectable young lady, right? And it's amazing how society has trained us to interact with the world so that you just offhand answer these awful questions. And I can't wait to share a story that happened to me on set when someone just decided they could ask me a terrible question that, in hindsight, I wish I hadn't answered. So let's look forward to that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the subject. I think these are wonderful. And if anyone else is like me, Anything that can help me be a little bit more like you, I'll take it.
Thank you.
So we want to thank you, the listener, for joining us and participating in the conversation by sending us your questions. Next week, we have a heavy episode, but one both Lois and I are looking very much forward to. We have a special guest joining us, and the topic is going to be on the narcissistic parent and learning how to cope with that. So we're going to come from the place of being children of narcissists. And even though Lois and I have plenty of experience in that realm, we thought there would be a great opportunity to have a very knowledgeable, smart, charming person join us. So stay tuned for that episode. In the interim, you could send us an email over at silverandsensational@gmail.com. You can interact with us on Instagram or Facebook at Silver and Sensational. We have clips happening every now and then over on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, what should they do right now, Lois?
Please like and absolutely subscribe. And for anybody who's new to YouTube, subscribing doesn't cost you a thing. No one's going to be sending you emails or whatever. It helps us with YouTube. So please hit like, subscribe, and share. Share it with your friends or even with those people you want to say no to when when you're saying yes.
It might be a good hint.
Absolutely.
Well, that sounds good, Lois. I can't wait until next week. And thank you again for being so willing to share so many
It's my pleasure,
parts of
and
yourself.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for your continued support. Goodbye, Jessica, and goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, Lois.
Bye-bye now. Thanks for watching, everyone, and don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and the notify bell. And please share it with your friends. And if you feel like commenting, use that box, will you?